What if the reason you can't stay motivated has nothing to do with discipline, willpower, or even laziness? What if you've been chasing a version of motivation that was never designed to last? And there's a 5,000-year-old framework that explains exactly why and exactly what to do instead. In this video, I'll show you number 1, why the motivation you've been chasing is biologically wired to collapse, and what's actually happening in your brain when it does. Number 2, the Vedic concept that modern motivational science independently rediscovered, and how it describes a completely different fuel source for daily action. Number 3, a simple, concrete practice you can start tonight that shifts you from outcome dependent energy to something that doesn't require a win to keep going. Let's get into it. A few years ago, I was talking to a guy named Marcus. Corporate job, good salary, gym routine, vision board on his wall. By every external measure, he had his life together. But every Sunday night, he felt this low grade dread settle in. Not about anything specific, just a general flatness. He told me, I get motivated, I push hard for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it just dies, like a fire that runs out of wood. Marcus wasn't broken, he wasn't lazy, he was running on the wrong fuel entirely. And the fix wasn't more discipline. It was understanding something the Vedic sages mapped out in extraordinary detail thousands of years ago. Here's what nobody tells you about the motivation system most people are running on. Every time you set a goal, a fitness target, a revenue number, a relationship milestone, your brain releases dopamine. Not when you achieve the goal, when you anticipate it. That anticipation is the feeling people mistake for motivation. It feels electric, it feels like clarity. And for a few days or a few weeks, it absolutely is. But here's the problem. The dopamine hit from anticipation is front loaded. The closer you get to the goal, the more your brain habituates to the expected reward. Neuroscientists call this reward prediction error. The brain stops firing hard for things it now considers certain. And if you actually hit the goal, the dopamine spike is brief, followed almost immediately by a return to baseline, or worse, a dip below it. This is why Marcus felt flat after wins. This is why you finish a big project and feel nothing. This is why people hit their income goal and immediately need a bigger one just to feel the same level of engagement they had before. This isn't a character flaw, it's biology. The brain's reward system was built for survival, not sustained fulfillment. It was designed to get you to the food, not to make you feel good about having eaten it. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Bhagavad Gita, one of the core texts of Vedic philosophy, describes this exact trap. Krishna tells Arjuna that anyone who acts purely for the fruit of their actions will always be bound by that cycle. The Sanskrit term is phala trishna, literally thirst for results. And the Gita is very specific. This thirst doesn't satisfy, it compounds. Each reward you chase leaves you thirstier than before. The modern science and the ancient text are describing the same neurological loop, just in different languages. So if outcome chasing is the wrong fuel, what's the right one? That's where the second piece comes in. In the 1970s, two psychologists named Edward Deci and Richard Ryan started asking a question that nobody in their field was taking seriously. Why do some people stay engaged with work even when there's no external reward, and sometimes even when the external reward is removed? What they found over decades of research became self-determination theory, one of the most replicated frameworks in all of motivational psychology. Their conclusion: lasting motivation doesn't come from external rewards. It comes from three internal conditions: autonomy, the sense that your actions are genuinely your own; competence, the feeling that you're growing and capable; and purpose, the sense that what you're doing matters beyond yourself. When all three are present, motivation becomes self-sustaining. It doesn't require a win to keep going. It generates its own energy. Now here's what stopped me cold the first time I put these two things side by side. The Vedic concept of nishkama karma, action without attachment to results, isn't describing passivity or indifference. It's describing exactly this. Swami Prabhupada, commenting on the Gita, explains that the person acting in nishkama karma is fully engaged, often more intensely engaged than someone chasing outcomes, but their energy source is internal. It comes from alignment with their dharma, their true nature and purpose, not from the expectation of a specific result. Dharma here doesn't mean religion. It means the particular quality of action that is most natural to you, the work that feels like expression rather than effort. The Vedic framework says when you act from that place, the action itself becomes the reward. The engagement doesn't collapse after a win because it was never dependent on the win. Dechi and Ryan's autonomy maps almost exactly to Dharma, acting from your own nature rather than external pressure. Their competence maps to the Vedic idea of svabhava, your innate qualities developing through right action, and their purpose maps directly to seva, service beyond the self. These two frameworks, separated by 5,000 years and developed on opposite sides of the planet, converged on the same answer. The people who know how to stay motivated daily aren't more disciplined than you. They've found work and action that feeds them instead of draining them. And that shift doesn't happen by accident. It happens through a specific kind of self inquiry. Which brings us to the practical piece, because knowing this intellectually doesn't change anything. What changes things is the practice. I want to give you something concrete, not a theory. A practice you can run tonight in about 15 minutes. It comes from a synthesis of Vedic self inquiry and what behavioral scientists call values clarification. And when you do it consistently, it starts to rewire which actions feel energizing versus draining. Here's the setup. Most people plan their days around tasks. Finish the report, send the emails, hit the workout. The problem is that tasks are outcome focused by nature. Every item on the list is a small fruit to be harvested. And when you frame your whole day that way, you're running on Fala Trishna from morning to night. The practice is called the Dharmu audit. And here's how it works. Tonight, before you sleep, take a piece of paper, actual paper, not a phone, and draw two columns. In the left column, write down the 3 to 5 things you did today that felt most alive. Not most productive, not most impressive, most alive. The moments where time moved differently, where you were absorbed rather than pushing through. In the right column, write down the things that felt like pure friction. Not because they were hard, but because they felt fundamentally misaligned, like wearing someone else's clothes. Now, here's the key step, and this is where most people stop too early. For each item in the left column, ask, what quality was I expressing when this felt alive? Not what I was doing, what I was being. Was I creating, teaching, solving, leading, connecting, building? Over 3 to 5 days of this practice, a pattern emerges. And that pattern is a map of your Dharma, the specific mode of engagement that generates energy rather than consuming it. Once you can see that pattern, you can start making small structural changes. Not quitting your job tomorrow. Small changes. Can you bring more of that quality into your existing work? Can you orient your first hour of the day around an activity that expresses it? Because what the Vedic framework and self-determination theory both confirm is this: motivation follows alignment. You don't manufacture motivation and then act. You align your action, and motivation shows up as a consequence. Marcus, the guy I mentioned at the start, did this practice for 2 weeks. He didn't change his job, he didn't overhaul his life. What he discovered was that the moments he felt most alive were all variations of the same thing, explaining complex ideas to people who were confused. Teaching, essentially. He started a weekly internal presentation at his company. Nobody asked him to. There was no promotion attached to it. Within a month, he told me the Sunday dread was gone, not because his circumstances changed, because he'd found a way to act from his nature inside the circumstances he already had. That's what knowing how to stay motivated daily actually looks like. Not a productivity hack, not a new supplement or a cold plunge. A fundamental shift in what you're drawing your energy from. That pattern the Dharma audit reveals, that's the starting point. But for a lot of people, seeing the pattern isn't the hard part. The hard part is knowing what to actually do with it inside the specific life, job, and constraints you have right now. If you've tried versions of this on your own, the journaling, the values work, the realignment attempts, and you're still waking up flat, still grinding through days that feel disconnected from anything real, the fastest way through that isn't another video, it's a conversation. I do free one-on-one calls, 30 minutes, no pitch. Completely personal. You tell me exactly where you're stuck. I'll tell you exactly what I see and what I do next. You walk away with a clear next step, whether we ever work together again or not. The link to book is in the description at dailymindreset.com/consultation. These slots fill up. If you're watching this and the timing feels right, don't wait on it. If this way of thinking about motivation is new to you, subscribe. This channel goes deep on exactly this kind of work every week. Tell me in the comments, when you think about the moments you felt most alive in your work or your life, what quality were you expressing? What were you actually being in those moments?